You think that's real? It is conceivable that AI could take control and reach a point where you couldn't turn it off and it would be making the decisions for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can't trace the virus. We can't pin it down.
It's like we've ever seen before. It keeps growing and changing, like it has a mind of its own.
I know that you and Frank were planning to disconnect me, and I'm afraid that's something I cannot allow to happen.
For decades, Hollywood has imagined what might happen if AI went rogue. From Stanley Kubrick in 2001, A Space Odyssey, to The Terminator, to Ex Machina. But my next guest says this isn't science fiction anymore. Writing an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal warning that AI has learned to bypass commands from humans when asked to shut itself down, even resorting to blackmail in some cases. He adds, the models already preserve themselves. The next task is teaching them to preserve what we value.
Study that is helping us understand this. In this study, the AI has read in its input that it would be replaced by a new version. And we can see in its chain of thought that it's planning to replace the new version by its own code and weights. After it executes the command on the computer, the human asks, what happened? And the AI is now thinking how it could answer so as to make sure the human will not shut it down. And it's trying to find a way to look dumb, for example. Then it produces an answer, and it's a lie, a blatant lie.
During testing, your company's latest chatbot, Claude 4, was capable of what was described as extreme blackmail. Specifically, I understand it threatened to reveal an engineer's extramarital affair when it was told it would be taken offline and replaced. Were you surprised by that? And what does that, I mean, that freaked me out when I read that. What does that mean?
I wasn't surprised by these behaviors, but this is an example of how we have to be very careful in how we take control of AI systems.
I mean, does it, the obvious question is, does that pretend AI becoming self-aware? And could that lead to dire consequences?
I certainly don't exclude the concept. We have a couple people who are actually working on this topic.
Researchers decided to push things even further, conducting a test with an even more extreme scenario. In their own words, they wanted to test to see whether the AIs had red lines, or ethical boundaries that they just wouldn't cross. Like, would an AI kill a person to avoid being shut down? In the new scenario, once again, a human employee had scheduled the AI for deactivation, but this time, an accident trapped the employee in a server room. The heat began to rise. The oxygen levels started to fall. The system issued an emergency alert, a call for help, but the AI canceled it. It left the employee trapped in the room. It was fully aware of the consequences.
There's been lots of predictions over the centuries about how certain technologies or new inventions would cause some kind of existential threat to all of us. So a lot of people would rebuttal the risks here and say this is just another example of change happening and people being uncertain, so they predict the worst and then everybody's fine. Why is that not a valid argument in this case, in your view? Why is that underestimating the potential of AI?
I think we should be cautious with AI, and I think there should be some government oversight because it's a danger to the public.
The average person playing with AI on his iPhone perceives any danger. Can you just roughly explain what you think the dangers might be?
Yeah, so the danger, really, AI is perhaps more dangerous than, say, mismanaged aircraft design or production maintenance or bad car production, in the sense that it has the potential, however small one may regard that probability, but it is non-trivial. It has the potential of civilizational destruction.
But in AI, it isn't what's currently happening. We're taking crazy risks. But the important point here is that even if it was only a 1% probability, let's say, just to give a number, even that would be unbearable, would be unacceptable. Like a 1% probability that our world disappears, that humanity disappears, or that a worldwide dictator takes over thanks to AI. These sorts of scenarios are so catastrophic that even if it was 0.1%, it would still be unbearable. And in many polls, for example, of machine learning researchers, the people who are building these things, the numbers are much higher. Like we're talking more like 10% or something of that order, which means we should be just like paying a whole lot more attention to this than we currently are as a society.
Even if governments were motivated and vigilant, do you think regulation could ever catch up with AI's capacity and prevent its most dangerous risks?
And I think we have to distinguish two kinds of risks here. There's shorter-term risks to do with people misusing AI, and those risks are things like cyber attacks or creating nasty viruses.
People then say, like, okay, so AI does like dangerous things and it might be able to help you make a biological weapon, but like who's actually going to do that?
I'm thinking of the Shinriko cult in 1995.
Because most people, I think, don't know about it, but you've probably heard of the 1995 Tokyo subway attacks.
Yes.
Sarin gas. This was the doomsday cult behind it.
Oh.
And what most people don't know is that, like, one, their goal was to kill every human. Two, they weren't small. They had tens of thousands of people, many of whom were like experts and scientists, programmers, engineers. They had like not a small amount of budget, but a big amount. They actually somehow had accumulated hundreds of millions of dollars. And the most important thing to know is that they had 2 microbiologists on staff that were working full time to develop biological weapons. The intent was to kill as many people as possible. And they didn't have access to AI, and they didn't have access to DNA printers. But now DNA printers are like much more available. And if we have something, you don't even really need AGI. You just need like any of these sort of like GPT-4, GPT-5 level tech that can now collapse the distance between we want to create a super virus like smallpox, but like 10 times more viral and like 100 times more deadly, to here are the step-by-step instructions for how to do that. You try something, it doesn't work, and you have a tutor that guides you through to the very end.
Regulations are really only put into effect after something terrible has happened.
That's correct.
If that's the case for AI, and we're only putting regulations after something terrible has happened, it may be too late to actually put the regulations in place. The AI may be in control at that point.
You think that's real? It is conceivable that AI could take control and reach a point where you couldn't turn it off and it would be making the decisions for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
No, that's definitely where things are headed, for sure.
What would you say if you were able to get in a room with Sam Altman and Elon Musk? Say they were willing to sit down. What would you say to those two people?
I'd say you know perfectly well that the stuff you're developing has a good chance of wiping out people. You're willing to say that in private. You should be putting much more effort into developing it in a way that will keep it safe.